Hello, beloved community, and welcome to the 6th Sunday after Pentecost. This week, we're going to keep it simple.
Come, Holy Spirit, renew the face of the earth. Set your people free. Come, Holy Spirit, renew your image in us. Heal our humanity.
This week comes from the Gospel of Mark, the 6th chapter, and we are going to begin in verse 1. Let's listen together for a word from God. Jesus left that place and came to his hometown. His disciples followed him. On the Sabbath, he began to teach in the synagogue. Many who heard him were surprised. Where did this man get all of this? What's this wisdom he's been given? What about the powerful acts accomplished through him? Isn't this the carpenter? Isn't he Mary's son and the brother of James, Joseph, Judas, and Simon? Aren't his sisters here with us? They were repulsed by him and fell into sin. Jesus said to them, "Prophets are honored everywhere except in their own hometowns, among their relatives, and in their own households." But he was unable to do any miracles there except that he placed his hands on a few sick people and healed them. He was appalled by their disbelief. Then Jesus traveled through the surrounding teaching village. He called for the 12 and sent them out in pairs. He gave them authority over unclean spirits. He instructed them to take nothing for the journey except a walking stick. No bread, no bags, no money in their belts. He told them to wear sandals, but not to put on 2 shirts. He said, "Whatever house you enter, remain there until you leave that place. If a place doesn't welcome you or listen to you as you leave, shake the dust off your feet as a witness against them." So they went out and proclaimed that people should change their hearts and lives. They cast out many demons, and they anointed many sick people with olive oil and healed them. These are God's words for God's people. Thanks be to God. Thanks be to God that for me, I have this reminder this week to keep it simple, right? That as we think about both of these pieces in this passage, that we often, if you're anything like me, we can often make things more difficult than we need to be. We overthink things, we complicate them, we make it more than it needs to be, right? And for particularly as Jesus goes back to his hometown, people are stating facts about who Jesus is. There's this group of people that are naming, okay, well, he's Mary's son, and he's the brother of all of these people, and he's a carpenter, right? So they're naming all of the things that Jesus is. They're tacking on his job description, his resume, so to speak, but they're making it more complicated than it needs to be, right? That this is Jesus. This is someone who loves and cares, who offers grace and mercy and healing to people, and they've complicated it by adding all of his resume type options. They're also talking more of in disgust. We hear that in the text, that they're repulsed by him. And they've just overcomplicated in some ways who Jesus is. That yes, Jesus is Mary's son. That yes, Jesus was a carpenter. But Jesus is more than the things that we associate as parts of his history. That Jesus' history is also one of healing and love and grace, right? I think about the ways that we overcomplicate our relationships. Particularly, I think about so many members in my community and the ways that we do Bible study every day that we meet is this way of honoring the voices of those for all of us, because we all have something to share and to speak to, and wisdom of the ways that this text inspires us as we continue to inspire one another, right? That's the second part that we're going to hear about, this go piece. But that oftentimes we say, you can't speak. Why are we allowing this voice to have an input? Because you're all of these things, because maybe you don't have an education, or you don't have a job, or you don't have a roof over your head, or you don't have this wonderful seminary education. So surely you have no right or worth or value to speak, right? We overcomplicate it. We overcomplicate our relationships. Relationships are about the person and the value and the beauty that exists in this human creature, and not what they've done or their, again, going back to this notion of maybe like a resume, right? We overcomplicate it. And Jesus, I think, here is reminding us to keep it simple, that faith can feel complicated, but I think that's because we make it too complicated. It's about loving, it's about grace, it's about mercy. Let's keep it simple. Let's keep the ways that we see Jesus simple. Let's keep the ways that we engage in one another simple, that it doesn't have to be what somebody has or doesn't have, but it's about who they are as a beautiful creature, right? Keeping it simple. And that's what Jesus offers to his disciples as he sends them out, right? Second piece, Jesus sends them out. That as the church, we are to go. We're to be a part of the world. We are to go and be in the world in such a way that we know who folks are, not just because of what we see as on the outside, but because we've been in relationship with them, right? And Jesus reminds his disciples as they go to keep it simple, to not get bogged down by resources and supplies and trying to say, I need to accumulate these things so that I can go and do the work. Again, if you're anything like me, sometimes we feel like we need to have the tools and we need to have all of these things to do what we need to do. When again, if we keep it simple, let's not be bogged down, as Jesus is reminding us, by the tools that we feel like we need to have to go. Because what we really need to have is a heart that loves, that has compassion, that has this sense of faithfulness, for grace and mercy, a desire for community and the wellness of this community. And so we're encouraged to keep our faith simple, in the ways that we're present with God, that God is present with us, keeping it simple. It's keeping it simple in the ways that we go to do the work that we need to do. That we don't have to acquire a whole bunch of tools and a whole bunch of resources to do the work that God has called us to do. To go, to be, to love, to serve. We have everything in our very being that we need to go and to love, right? God has shown us love. We don't need a whole bunch of tools. We don't need a whole bunch of ministry resources. We don't need a whole bunch of money when we go and we love, because ministry is on the ground. It's work. It's about keeping it simple. So, beloved community, as we go forward into this week, I pray that this passage challenges all of us, including me, to remember to keep it simple. Let's love as Jesus taught us to love. Let's be faithful. Let's see who Jesus is and what Jesus has done and do the same. Amen.